It's sounding awful. It's like, you're playing a record at a 45 at 33 speed or something like that. At least you speed it up to 78. You got the chipmunks, right? All right, it's Tri-City Sports Now. I'm Marky Billson. If you missed it, we had Kelly Harper on to begin the show, so I didn't have a chance to do my monologue. You can, of course, watch the archives like us on 1420 WEMB Sports Radio, and you will be able to hear the interview that I did with Kelly Harper, the new Lady Vols basketball coach. And I asked her about, Connecticut, and because Tennessee wants to be the premier women's basketball program in the country again. Now, that being said, everybody wants to win, right? I would argue with you that VMI wants to win the Southern Conference. It's just, do they have the resources there to do so? That sort of thing. But the fans still think of the program in that regard. And I mentioned, and I guess I look at this area, and I don't think it's very cosmopolitan. And I see sports as a way to become more cosmopolitan. And by that being a higher level of sports. I've mentioned, what would it mean if we had a new arena? And a hockey team was here in the ECHL. What would that mean to have an ECHL team in the Tri-Cities? Whereas Knoxville, Asheville, and Roanoke would have lower minor league teams. What would that mean to the area? Now one can say, we already have that jewel in BMS. Yes, we do. But wouldn't you like to have two jewels? Not just one. Wouldn't you like to have a sports jewel that appealed to another audience? Not just the NASCAR fans, of which I am one, but I'm also a hockey fan. It's kind of like me and Ricky Rockman. By the way, you can listen to my interview with Ricky Rockman. That's on YouTube, by the way, if you want to do that. Just Marky Billson, Ricky Rockman. I have an old friend calling me out. I can't believe I love listening to you talk to Ricky Rockman. That was a while back, but it was back. When was that? That was in 2017. That was 2 years ago. We did Ricky Rockman on here. But yeah, the interview is archived on Tri-City Sports Now's YouTube page. Actually, the Marky Billson YouTube page. I am Marky Billson. So, here's the deal. Connecticut going to the Big East. There's going to be a trickle-down effect. What's it going to be? I spoke of that on Monday. However, Fletcher Page, he's a sports writer, Cincinnati Enquirer, and he's writing that the American Athletic Conference will be just fine at 11 football-playing members. They don't want to split the TV pie 12 ways when it only has to be split up 11. But I wonder about that. I wonder if in time it will be brought open, despite what Page, who I have no reason to believe isn't a brilliant reporter, and the reason why is because, you split up a pie 12 ways, everybody's getting 8% of the pie. You split it up 11 ways, everybody's getting 9%. That's not that big of a deal, and if you can add a bigger market into that pie, well, you'll get more revenue splitting it 12 ways than you will 11. And also, one of the reasons why Connecticut is leaving, you can talk about tradition and all this, but the Americans signed a TV contract. It can now be reopened with ESPN. And Connecticut was not happy with how many games the Huskies were going to play on ESPN+. And so that's why they were looking for something else. They were and the Big East, which traditionally, has always been very TV friendly, and they play in big markets. That's probably the real reason that they chose now to go back to the Big East and leave football on the bubble. By the way, what we talked about SoCon John Hooper, could Connecticut go down to the FCS? The earlier reports are, no, they're not going to do that. They'll just be an independent. And I'm being told they're going to hope that they can get games still with, UMass would obviously want to play them. If Army is an independent, there you go. Come on, play Syracuse, just those old school, try to get those guys in, see what you can do. New Hampshire's got a good FCS program traditionally. Maybe you get them in, that's what you sort of do. That's what they're looking at. And it's kind of funny. You think about this, and ESPN, they started actually the first inclination when ESPN was first proposed, it was to be a sports network broadcasting sports in Connecticut, with the Huskies being the jewel. But you would have, let's say, Connecticut high school wrestling at some point. That was the idea behind ESPN. It soon expanded after that, obviously. But, the Connecticut Huskies program in so many ways was the inspiration. Sports in Connecticut for ESPN. I don't think that ESPN, though, is going to want to, I don't know if they're sentimental for Connecticut, but with the American, if they're not going to have this top 30 market team in Connecticut, and the big league team in town, you know why I say ETSU is the big league team in Market 102? Well, I want to say Hartford is market 29. That's going from memory. But they're a top 30 market. They are the largest market without any major professional sports. Whalers moved away to become Carolina Hurricanes, of course, years ago. So they don't have, they've got in their minor league baseball or whatever. But Connecticut really is the big league team then in town, just 27 miles to the east of Hartford and Storrs, Connecticut. Effectively a suburb, a college town, but, that sort of thing. And so that becomes, with that sort of fan base in a large market, they're going to watch Connecticut. That becomes very appealing for ESPN to have, and so they could now reopen their contract with the American and say, we're not going to pay you that. You've lost this jewel. And so there, I also think that could allow those reports that Cincinnati Enquirer is making that they'll stay at 11 football schools. I'm not so sure. I'm skeptical of that. And anyway, I could even do this. I could see this Wichita State, which is now a basketball member. There's been some talk in recent years about restarting the Shockers football program. They had it up until 86. Bill Parcells coached there. Phil Fulmer coached at Wichita State. And, it would be a while, though, before Wichita State would elevate to the point where they could actually be a factor in football. It would be, 5 years minimum, you'd figure? I don't know, UAB, they restored football and started to win right away. It wasn't always ETSU struggling, Kennesaw State started to win right away, that sort of thing. But, one wonders if reviving Wichita State football would do as much for, let's say, the RPI for the American as would bringing in, say, BYU or Army, which seem to be the two schools that they are looking at to possibly become football-only members. BYU provides perhaps the biggest brand name for football a conference can receive out there. Notre Dame isn't going to be joining any conference. So then there's BYU, 1984 national champions. And, you bring them in, and they're a school, it's a long way from, let's say, Annapolis to Provo. I get that. But you put them in a West Division, you put them in with Dallas and Houston and Tulsa, and that's, they used to travel to Hawaii every couple of years in the old WAC. So how difficult is this, especially when it's football only, Now, Army, they'd provide the nation's biggest market to the American. Now, I realize that the Cadets do not have the fan base of the Giants or the Jets. But the American might boost their brand enough where they could draw more fans and media attention. And TV contracts are not necessarily negotiated on, let's say, actual viewers, but potential viewers. So having Army is the major college football program of New York, I suppose. You could argue Rutgers, but that's more of the New Jersey feel. I do believe that they're in the New York market, and that proves it. There's not a lot of Rutgers fans out there, but think about this. Who did the Big Ten want when they were expanding? We want Rutgers. Why? Number one TV market. They don't have any fans. Doesn't matter. It's potential. If they ever get good, they'll watch them. Why don't you take West Virginia or Pitt? No, not big enough markets. Rutgers, that's what we want. West Virginia is a far better athletic program. West Virginia wins. West Virginia, all things considered, would rather be in the ACC, and they wanted to be in the ACC when the ACC was formed in 1953. But the ACC said it's too tough to get to Morgantown, sorry. And that's really still even the case now, even with the advent of the Eisenhower interstate system. And so, ACC says, you know what? I mean, TV market's as big, Pittsburgh. Morgantown technically is the Pittsburgh TV market, but, wait a minute, it's easier to fly into the Pittsburgh airport to go to Pittsburgh than just Morgantown and drive 70 miles south. You got that. What kind of a market is Bluefield, West Virginia anyway? I mean, that's what you bring. No. Stick with Pitt. They bring in that, maybe, Johnstown, that sort of thing. They're in market number. And Johnstown, Altoona State College is similar to the Tri-Cities in market size, that sort of thing. So, that's what we're going to do. West Virginia draws more fans, but, that made the potential, made Pitt the school that the ACC wanted. Again, the potential made Rutgers the school the Big Ten wanted instead of perhaps Pitt or somebody else that was discussed, West Virginia included. Now here's what I'm excited, and I mentioned this on Monday. Army-Navy with a conference title on the line. I started to think about this a little more. I couldn't see how that could be the last football game of the year anymore, obviously. If both schools are in the American, maybe that would kill that tradition of Army-Navy. Maybe, I could see Army, who is not necessarily, their athletic vision is not going to be the same as Georgia's or Tennessee's or somebody. But I could see them saying, no, let's keep Army-Navy last game of the year, that's our Super Bowl, this sort of thing. But then again, wouldn't it just add luster if that game was ever for a conference title, especially in a conference like the American, which is not the SEC, but it's respected? Yeah, there's more of a... Wait a minute. Navy's going for the division title in the American. Yeah, wait a minute. Army's got a decent team. I'm going to watch this game. It's something other than, choose a side and root for it among anonymous players. And let's just say you move would it kill... And again, college football doesn't have a commissioner. It desperately needs one. But would it kill Army and Navy if that game was moved from, say, middle of December to, Friday after Thanksgiving? If somehow the lords of college football could say, Army-Navy gets the noon kickoff the Friday after Thanksgiving. Something like that. If you could do that, there you go. Would that be so bad? Now, here's how this trickled down. If the American, never call them the AAC. They hate that. I used to be Tulane's pregame host, okay? I was informed. You can call it the American Athletic Conference. You can call it the American. Never, ever, ever call it the AAC. It's like Virginia Tech. You can call them VPI if you're old school. You can call them Virginia Tech. You can call them Tech. Do not call them VA Tech. We hate that, Same thing Southern California. They hate being called Southern Cal. You know how many times I used to see Johnson City Press refer to the University of Southern California as Southern Cal? Anyway, after they came out and said, don't do that. Of course, that was more the advertising department on a football contest, but still. Here's the trickle-down effect of Connecticut leaving and possibly the American either not expanding or bringing in either BYU or Army as a football-only member, which is kind of what I think it will happen. It's bad news for Appalachian State. Mountaineers fans had to think, boy, this was our ticket to forever not being a mid-major anymore and being a major athletic program. Because when you call Houston or Temple or Central Florida a major athletic program, I certainly would. And that was their ticket. They'd be in that club, They could do something other than go to the Camellia Bowl or whatever it is, Play a MAC team. That sort of thing. Anyway, so that looks like it's not going to happen. That's good news for ETSU. Can you imagine, and I said this, if Appalachian State is playing a game against Houston, and over here's ETSU, oh, look, we're hosting Western Carolina. Hello, come to our game. remember when ETSU didn't have football, I used to see Appalachian State stuff and advertisements, and they were actually pulling fans from Elizabethton. They were trying to make that their area. They've got a radio affiliate in Tri-Cities. And I could easily see, now, wait a minute, it's only an hour away. You're taking your life into your hands when you drive to Boone over 321. I give you that. But it's only an hour away. And don't you think then that the local media, say the TV stations, hey, they've got to cater to Poga and Mountain City and Roan Mountain and places like that as just as well as they do Johnson City. There's a reason. Virginia Tech, in Johnson City, Virginia Tech isn't that big of a deal. In Abingdon, they're the team in town. So the local TV stations have to give Virginia Tech a heck of a lot of coverage. Coverage they otherwise would give, let's say, Tennessee or ETSU or maybe Appalachian State. If Appalachian State would join the American, think about that. They'd have to cut into their ETSU coverage. So the reports that the American are either only looking at BYU or Army as a football member or not going to expand after Connecticut leaves, it's not so good for Appalachian State, but it is good for ETSU. I mean, ETSU would be so dwarfed if Appalachian State joined the American. Which, I mentioned, I said, look, if they're going to go that way, I guess I'm wrong about this, but it still could happen. I thought they'd go Georgia State because of market size. But then again, you can get Army, which is number one. Maybe you look at that, too. But let's just say Army then joins the American. If you told me right now, so Marky, here are your ideas. You're the commissioner of the American, okay? Stand pat after UConn leaves, or you can add BYU as a football-only member or Army as a football-only member. I go in there, I try to work something out with the Army-Navy game, and then I say, yeah, that's who I want. Number one market. Make an Army-Navy game part of my conference? Absolutely, that's what I want. What would that do for the Tri-Cities? Because remember, Army has been recruiting the Tri-Cities lately. Right now, their kicker, Landon Sawyers, he's from Dobbins-Bennett. Back in 2016, remember, we had John Feinstein. In fact, you can listen to that interview on YouTube if you're so inclined. Science Hill's Malik McGew was returning punts for Army in 2016. In 2017, Morristown's Bryson Stevens was a cadet. Cade Ballard, state championship winning quarterback at Greenville. He's going to go to West Point just this year. So, theorize this. If Army continues to recruit the area, Science Hill is big on military academies, for whatever reason. If Army continues to recruit the area, and were to continue the cadet success, say against Navy, they've won now, 3 in a row? If the Army was a nationally ranked team last year. So if they continue that success, and they continue to recruit the Tri-Cities, let's say Cade Ballard is the quarterback in 3 years of the Black Knights of the Hudson, and Army's still in the top 20. Or 25, as the case may be. Well, what does that do then? Think about this. What does that do for the area in terms of reputation for producing college football talent? Because I'm not sure that it really has it right now, but it could be there in my opinion. I'm wondering if there aren't some players who could go elsewhere who are going and playing FCS. One of them, think about this. Remember Gerald Sensabaugh? Started at ETSU, dropped the program, went to North Carolina, then he started 10 years in the NFL. You tell me. It seems like it takes somebody like, Jason Witten's family or Cade Ballard's family to get those players into major college football. Maybe major college football comes to the Tri-Cities if Army joins the American and Cade Ballard has a lot of success. It's a theory. Tri-City Sports Now.
American Savings.